Literary voice, name pending.
Hello, welcome to our podcast. We have
Janette Rodriguez
and me, Isabel Fernandez. Today we are going to be diving into early British literature, and we're going to be talking about modern feminism and gender norms. Yeah.
Just focusing on the path to modern feminism.
Okay, so first we're going to start off with Beowulf.
Beowulf is an Old English poem, the first poem with the manuscript found in the Codex. And this is around 8th or 11th century. I've kind of seen different articles just saying that there's no exact date, but I know in class we did give it a date, so I don't know what's accurate.
And also before it was turned into a book, like it was just told as a story.
Yeah, that's important to say because translation can get lost, not just through the storytelling, but also through the translation itself, because it's Old English. And Beowulf has no author, no writer. Nobody knows who wrote it. So I think when it comes to focusing on the path to modern feminism, we need to talk about the depiction of Grendel's mom. That's just not something we can ignore.
Yes, she's often depicted as a monster because it's shortly after that Grendel first kills in the castle, and then he's killed. That's when his mother is introduced. In lines actually 1258 through 59, Grendel's mother, Montrose, Hellbride, brought it on her wrong. So that's right there. It just shows me that she's depicted as a monster already, even though her son just got killed. So she kind of wants to avenge him, which is kind of interesting how they depict her as a monster.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. When I read Beowulf, and we all read the same translation. So when I first read Beowulf, I was like, this isn't a monster. She doesn't sound like a monster to me. I feel like she just sounded like a single mom, because Grendel doesn't have a dad. So she just sounded like a single mom who was hurting. She was in pain. She was suffering, like you said. Her son, her only son, just died. And prior to him dying, he was ridiculed. He was taunted for the way he looked. I mean, he's also described as like this devilish looking creature, similar to her. But there's like a line where they do mention like her claws, but I just took that as nails. Because, like, whenever you get your nails done, you like to do, like, ASMR.
Oh, like my claws.
Yeah. So I just always thought of her as not a monster, but she was just depicted that way.
They were just often shouting, kind of being loud, which is like loud neighbors. That's kind of was like, well, let's take a step back here. Let's see who's actually the monster,
Right, which I think is my whole issue with Beowulf is there's like this theme of monsters and who is a monster? Who are we to say or to judge, I guess, one another? And that's really what they do in Beowulf. I mean, they definitely say that Grendel killed, but he only kills because he's provoked. I just mentioned early on that there's like always a reason. It's not just random. He's not like a psycho, sociopath, just going around killing people. Mm-hmm. This is not like a true crime murder mystery thing. And so, I don't know, it's interesting because there's also a lot of tones of Christianity. And so we've kind of see how like early on religion is used to put these restrictions on women and kind of how women should act, how women should be.
And I think with talking about Beowulf, we have to bring up the Valna Hedley, her interpretation of Beowulf as a mere wife. Mm-hmm. So in the Mere Wife, it's kind of like the opposite here, a really, really modern version. I was shocked when I read this that I would be reading this in early British literature.
I know, I was shocked too. I would have never expected it, but I actually loved reading it, but right after, the original. Because the original, I'm gonna be honest, it took me a while to get through that. Like,
Yeah.
I was just so, like...
Yeah, I was just saying right now, it's like over 1,000 lines.
You know, it's considered an epic poem. Like, one of the first and the most well-known poems around the world.
It's written so long ago. Maybe if it was told as an oral tradition. But I think you need to, like, read Beowulf in order to understand the Mere Wife on a deeper level, for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely, because of how many references are put into the Mere Wife.
The character Willa, who is also the monster, and then on this version, it's... Is the name Gren or Grendel? I think it's a Gren.
So it's Dill.
It's Dill and Gren.
Gren. They're like two halves of one character. Grendel. I think that's the kind of play she was getting at. Because it sounds like Grendel from Beowulf, and that's what the Mere Wife is a translation of. In a way, the characters from the Mere Wife do reflect Beowulf, but they seem to have a lot more complexities, and I think that's why I like it so much, because we can see the different struggles of each character more.
I think it explores modern feminism to a different level. After, like, Beowulf commits Ben Wolf commits the murder.
In Mere Wife.
Yeah, Mere Wife. The wife's, like, it says, like, the council of her family members, so, like, all the older women in her family, they come in and they're like, okay, we'll take care of your mess. But, like, after that, Willa is kind of just thinking back about it, and she just remembers how how people have, like, cheated on each other, and there's just, like, a bunch of secrets that's kept within, like, the women's society.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy, like, how she goes into that topic. No one, I feel like, really talks about that.
When it comes to Willa's such an interesting character in the Mere Wife.
Yes, because women dynamics, friends and her mother and her mother's mother come over, they really pick upon her appearance, which is something also that I feel like if you're a woman, you know, like your mother, like, girl, you a hot mess right now.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I relate to it.
For Willa, it's so intensified. I mean, that's really the reason why she is the way she is. It's because of all that trauma that she just didn't know how to cope with. So I think the mother and daughter dynamic is so interesting there. And then there's the dynamic between Willa and Dana.
PTSD.
Yeah, PTSD. Then she's a single mom too, because she's supposed to be Grendel's mom, right? In the translation, that's kind of who she falls under category-wise. And so she has PTSD. You know, she's a war veteran, so she's experienced trauma that, you know, is unfathomable. Like, I can't even put it into words. And then on top of that, she's trying to raise a child by herself in the woods, basically. Like, she is in the forest, like she's
like in a dark cave.
Yeah, she's like in a cave or something. Like,
probably facing hypothermia at night.
Yeah, they have like little to no resources, and that's like a big thing throughout the entirety of the Mere Wife, which is why I think I just found it more interesting. Well, she's a woman. You know, she is accurately expressing the thoughts of women, and that's not something we've really seen in literature until recently, which is, you know, it's sad. Talking about how we haven't really seen in literature women's voices being heard, because oftentimes we see just like this silencing of women and how they need to follow specific gender norms and, you know, societal expectations. But with Marjorie Kemp, right? So Marjorie Kemp and Julie of Norwich, very similar around the same time, kind of focus on anchoresses and mystics.
Anchoresses, they were usually Christians who desired to live in a contemplative existence in isolation.
Women only really had two roles. So it was to get married, be a wife, or a mom, right? Both, yeah. Either one.
So either way, you had to get married.
Either way, they had to get married. Or if they didn't want to marry, to avoid, you know, that the only other way they could avoid that, like, gender expectation was to devote themselves.
And oftentimes they would end up writing about their religious experiences.
Which is crazy because we literally don't have any other writings there's probably a whole lot more somewhere.
Like some hidden writing.
Yeah, some hidden writing. Because really, all we know is what we've seen from Marjorie Kemp and Julie of Norwich. But there's probably more anchoress writings that have yet to be found. Because think about it, what was their day-to-day life? Like, what were they doing?
Well, it's interesting you say that because, like, that's when they started to kind of, like, shift power from the kings to the merchants. And it was kind of like there's just, like, a bunch of stores all day and, like, people walking around. Mm-hmm. So, obviously, there has to be something else going on.
Yeah, like, I'm sure people came up to them and were, like, talking to them about, like, their problems, seeking advice. But I feel like there had to have been... Maybe they made, like, friends, or, like, people that would constantly go to visit them.
When they were sealed up, too, it makes me think, like, I hope, like, they weren't ever taken advantage of, because it was usually, like, a man who was, like, in charge of the church.
That's true.
So I'm thinking, like, maybe if there was, like, a lock in the door, like...
Yeah, we don't know. And either way, we wouldn't have known, because they wouldn't have let her write about that or, like, tell people about that. Yeah, they would have, like... destroyed that.
No. But with Margie Kemp, like, I'm surprised, like, her writing got out, because, like, what I read from her story was very interesting. Like, obviously, she had a bunch of kids, and her husband...
How many kids did she have? She had, like, what, 10? It was actually 14.
After she gave him birth, she kind of, what we know now is postpartum. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where they get depression and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And during those times, she thought that demons were talking to her. After, like, she had, like, one of her last kids, she was like, I'm just going to keep on praying to God. She was plagued with a vision of demons who tempt her into sin and tell her that God has turned away from her, leaving her fall endlessly to evil. However, then, she has an experience where God came to her and said he never went away from her. She wanted to show her gratitude by committing celibacy and fasting.
Traveling across Europe and
the Middle East, yeah. Attempting to live as peaceful as possible. And during that, she also did, like, fasting. But her husband was kind of, like, against that. He was like, no, you should probably eat something. Also, too, scholars believe that it was fictional, or it was speculated that her life may have been taken better as a parable.
Especially because there's a lot of religious Christian undertone to it. Like we've seen, religion is used to reinforce tenderness. So, Marjorie Kemp, is she what, a mystic or an anchoress? No, I think she's a mystic. Yeah,
because she did have.
Because she had, like, these, Wait, anchoresses couldn't have intercourse?
No, anchoresses were the ones who were locked up.
Yeah, but they could probably have intercourse before they got locked up, no? How old do you think you had to be an anchoress? Because I highly doubt they had kids in there.
Well, because, think about it, like, people didn't live that long. In the Middle Ages, the average lifespan was 31 years old. Yeah.
Moving on.
The Tempest.
In The Tempest, there's only 2 characters.
You know, at first, I actually, like, I have to say this. I thought at first the spirit was, like, supposed to be a girl.
Yes, so I think technically it can. It's played by men and women, so I don't really know. I never really thought of the spirit as having a gender.
The reason why I thought it was, like, a woman is because, like, I think the way they describe how she moves and how she acts, it kind of reminds me of Tinkerbell.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, the spirit does whatever for the guy, which is kind of like a gender norm, like, for a woman doing stuff for men. And also, like, the way she moves, like, was, like, dainty and stuff like that.
Very in tune with her emotions and with everyone else's. Because that's kind of her job, is to go around, like you said, pleasing others.
And she's kind of like a trickster, too, right? Or
Yeah. She is. She's considered, like, in Shakespeare's plays, he typically has, like, a spirit or, like, a trickster. So Ariel, or in Midsummer Night's Dream, there's also, you know, one. But I never really thought about that, like, the spirit itself having a gender. That's interesting.
It's the only reason why I thought about that is because when I watched the play here, it was played by a girl, but then when we watched the play in class, it was played by a boy. And I was like, interesting. I was like, wait, maybe they got inspiration from Shakespeare. 2, like, characters that are, like, specifically said, like,
named she, her, like giving those pronouns. So there's two characters who are given she, her pronouns when they're talked to, or that they're just written as women in the text. And that's Miranda, who's the daughter of Prospero, and Sycorax, so Caliban's mother. Miranda, I don't know how you felt about her. Mind you, this was probably written like 1610-ish, 1611, like around that time. And around this time, women were not acting in their plays. So all the videos we've seen are like the modern like portrayals of Shakespeare aren't accurate to how they would play them on stage, because only men would be in the cast. It was an all-male cast, regardless of the role.
I totally forgot about that. When we first started learning about the first plays and stuff like that, that it was only played by men because women could not do that. Or it wasn't normal for them to do that, and it would be men dressed in girls' costume, which is my first, like it kind of reminds me of, like, drag. Because how they dress up. But also, I was like, I wonder if, like, that's kind of when things, like, started happening, or, you know?
Like, knowing that this was a role that was going to be played by a man, and just the way that she's written, like, in the very beginning, like, gets on stage and she's lamenting, you know, she's like, oh, woe is me, like, oh, my sorrows, or I forgot what exactly she says, but she's just very emotional. She's depicted as very emotional throughout the entire thing. And she's kind of portrayed also as, like, innocent and pure, but almost gentle, but it's almost like a passive, because she's, well, first of all, she's believed to be in her early teens, which is important to mention, because I think it says that she was, like, 3 in the actual text. It says that she was 3 when they got sent to the island, her and her dad, and they spent, like, 12 years there. So I'm assuming she's, like, around 14, 15. So yes, maybe that's just, like, teen behavior that he was trying to depict. I don't know. I think it was weird for me because she doesn't get a choice in who she marries, and Prospero basically picks her husband for her. And I felt like that was just the reinforcing of gender norms that we've just seen.
And also, too, when she first starts getting emotional, he puts her to sleep. And I was like, wait a second. Disregarding, like, her
emotions.
Yeah. And also, wasn't it a common theme to see in Chaucer's writing about women lamenting the things that they wanted?
Yeah. So I don't really know, like, if it was necessarily meant to come off as that. That's just how I interpreted it. That
definitely reinforcing gender roles with men and women, and how men used to choose also the wife's husband.
Yeah, because
often it benefited their family.
In Tempest, it benefited Prospero when you think about it politically, quote unquote politically. Yeah, because he knew that she was going to end up marrying a prince. Yeah. And I mean, I guess you can argue that, like, she hadn't, like, ever seen a human, but who had, like, the choice to show her other humans? Her dad.
Obviously, it sucks that she couldn't have her own choice, but at least she fell in love with the guy.
But did she?
Did she actually?
Did she actually? Well, here's the thing. I will say the thing about Miranda's character that surprised me is that she, like, tells him, I'm going to be your wife, and if not, then I'm going to die, or something like that. I'm just paraphrasing here. But
she's some Romeo and Juliet, also written by Shakespeare.
Announces she's going to be his wife. She, like, proposes without proposing, which is something that we don't really see until, like, recently. I feel like I've heard of a few people, like, where the woman proposes, not the man.
Honestly, I'm scared of rejection. Yeah, that's also confusing too. The gender roles today, I'm glad they're not as pressurous as before, because that leaves you more control of situations and stuff like that. I couldn't imagine not having, like, being able to make my own decisions about my love life. Parents choose who I'm gonna marry. Scary. That is normal in different cultures, though.
Yeah, and it's still happening today. It still happens.
But now, like, obviously the child has more of, like, a sway. Like, they can actually, like, talk their opinion.
Well, at least here they do.
In America.
This reminded me about this song.
What song did it?
It's a song, and I heard it on TikTok, on social media, and it's by the lovely Jane Bell, who believes that pop is dying and that she's like their savior. And so she's a woman, and I guess, I don't know if all her songs are about like, you know, the similar themes of like feminism and like kind of criticizing how religion is being used. Listen to the first line. I want you to listen to it, please.
Yes.
Crazy how the very first sin was a woman who ate.
I listened to this and I was just like thinking about it as I was heading into like, as we were heading to film this. We're recording this in a lovely conference room, by the way. But I was thinking about this on my way here, and I mean, it's crazy because that really was the first sin. Like,
I know it's crazy how like something so simple as that, it can be packed with so many important topics, and there's so many things to be talked about in that one song.
The gender norms, Adam and Eve, man and woman. I don't know.
Also, can we talk about the guy who was telling women to be softer? I don't know. I'm not really sure what his name is, but he's on the same team as Taylor Swift's boyfriend. And it was a college speech.
But this was it was at a commencement, but basically he was like telling a room full of women. He says that some of you, and I quote, some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world, end quote. And that was just so crazy because, first of all, a woman does not need to have a child to be a woman.
No.
Not all women want children. And so
I want to bear children.
Yeah, and also, that's like totally, he just glossed over their achievement.
Yeah.
Like, graduating is such a big deal.
Graduating college, getting your first degree.
And instead he's talking about marriage and children. Like, not everyone's going to go on to get married or have children.
Or that's not their biggest goal in their life.
Yeah, that was none of his business to bring up, basically.
Yeah, we barely got voting rights in 1920.
No, yeah, and Mary Wollstonecraft wasn't writing until like 1701, 1709. I don't know. Maybe she wasn't writing then. I don't know when she was writing.
During the Victorian.
I think it was like 1792, actually. So late 17th century, like you said, Victorian era. But that's why I think it's like super important we talk about this.
Feminism, she started it off.
Yes.
And then we get into Virginia Woolf, pushed for more equality.
Before, women were written by men, and men don't know women the way they think. They just don't know women.
They don't know women because they're not a woman.
Because they're not a woman. And that will be all for today's podcast because we are going to be late.
Thank you for listening.
Woo! We got class. Thank you for listening.